Yeah, this is an extraordinary story. Looking into the leaks connected to the Russia investigation from Attorney General Barr and the Justice Department. According to the New York Times, the Justice Department, first under Jeff Sessions, subpoenaed Apple in 2017 and early 2018 for the data of at least a dozen people tied to the House Intelligence Committee, including the top Democrat Adam Schiff. Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell also confirms to NBC News his records were seized. The Times reports the records of aides and family members of those connected to the committee also were collected, including those of a minor. No evidence was ever found tying the committee to the leaks. But that did not stop Trump's next Attorney General, William Barr, from reviving the investigation a year later. The Times, citing three sources, reports Barr recruited about a half dozen investigators to work on that case. After years of nothing to show for that investigation, the Times reports some in the department began to see it as politically motivated. You think? Barr declined to comment, as did the Biden Justice Department. Congressman Adam Schiff now is calling on the agency's inspector general to investigate.
That is, I think, a terrible abuse of power. It violates, I think, the separation of powers, but it also makes the Department of Justice just a fully owned subsidiary of the president's personal legal interests and political interests. And that does such damage to the department. So it's extraordinary, maybe unprecedented, for the department to seek records like this of a member of Congress or staff of a member of Congress or staff of a committee, to do so in a partisan way, to do so when they're investigating him, to do so openly calling on his department. It's hard to express just how shocking an abuse of power this really is.
So, Joe, what you have here, and we're going to talk to Michael Schmidt in just a moment, one of the reporters from the New York Times on this, is the former attorneys general, both Jeff Sessions and then William Barr, basically assembling a cavalry to go and look inside the Intelligence Committee to see who they thought might be leaking stories to outlets like the New York Times and using subpoena power to do so.
I mean, this seems awfully extraordinary, this news that we're waking up to this morning, and perhaps it's happened before, and maybe those examples just aren't coming to mind. But here you have an administration, and there's really a parallel with the clip that we played coming in, where you had people shocked and stunned that Joe Biden suggested that Donald Trump is going to try to steal the election if things didn't go his way. Of course, that's exactly what happened. Here, you actually had Donald Trump and everybody around Trump, all of his defenders, screaming and howling about how the, quote, deep state had been spying on them during the transition. At the same time, they're literally spying on members of the press. They're spying on partisan political opponents. And this is what seems new to me. Spying on political rivals in another branch of government. I mean, there's a reason why we have three separate branches of government, and there are checks and balances. And so you actually have Donald Trump's White House, Donald Trump's Justice Department spying on a separate branch of government that's conducting its oversight role in investigating the executive branch. And like I said, maybe this has happened before. I don't remember this ever happening. If it has happened, we don't want to engage in being too melodramatic here. But my God, it just seems to me that this is an extraordinary breach. It is a constitutionally challenging event, again, when an executive branch spies on a legislative branch committee that's doing investigations and oversight on that president. Let's bring in one of the reporters of this story, New York Times reporter and MSNBC national security analyst, Michael Schmidt. He's the author of the great book, Donald Trump versus the United States, Inside the Struggle to Stop a President. And we should note that Michael was one of the several New York Times reporters who had his own record subpoenaed by the Trump Justice Department. So Michael, we obviously last week expressed concerns about you and other members of the press having their records sifted through by government agencies on leak investigations. That had happened before. It's happened before. It happened also during the Obama administration. They were very aggressive. I'm trying to remember, though, whether we've ever had a president and his administration spy on members. I'm sure if Nixon didn't do it, he certainly thought about it, but actually spy and seize the records of opponents from another branch that was investigating that president and his administration. This seems like extraordinarily dangerous and new. I'm sort of stammering around this morning because I just think this is new territory.
No, I think you're right. And as we found in our reporting, we could not find a similar example of this in recent memory. Now, this could have happened in a leak case that we don't know about. There are lots of leaks that are investigated, and there are lots of tactics that are used in them. So in another matter, sure, maybe this did happen, but we certainly didn't find out about it. So that sets this apart. You're right. It is different than the subpoenas that we've seen over the years for reporters' phone records. By the way, a tactic now that the Biden Justice Department says they will not follow, even though they were following it up until about a week ago. The thing I think that also sets this apart, certainly in terms of Congress, is that this is exactly what Trump wanted. And this is exactly why presidents are counseled not to talk about ongoing investigations or about how the powers of the Justice Department should be used. Because if something like this were to come out, the first instinct of everyone is to say, well, that's exactly what Donald Trump, who was the president, who was the person who could put whoever he wanted at the Justice Department, who at the time was putting all of his pressure on that Justice Department. You have to remember, this is 2017, 2018. Trump is very angry about the Mueller investigation. Sessions and Rosenstein are afraid they're going to get fired at any turn because they're trying, Rosenstein is saying he's trying to protect Mueller and the Mueller investigation. And it is in that atmosphere that this happens, that the Justice Department takes this extraordinary action to pull go to Apple and get the records, the data and information, iCloud information for one of the president's chief rivals, the staff of that rival, and a child for one of the staff members.
It's really unbelievable. And Willie, this is also the same time when Donald Trump kept telling anybody who would listen to him, that is my Justice Department. That is the Trump Justice Department. I can do whatever he want. He said he could do whatever he wanted to do, and obviously he chose to use that Justice Department to spy on political opponents in another branch of government.
Yeah, and time and again, the Justice Department was all too willing to play that role for President Trump. And Michael, I'm interested if we can take a step back in what the Justice Department was looking for specifically. Okay, you go to Apple, you say, give us these records, give us the metadata. What did they think they were going to find, number one? And there's another compelling piece, part of the story, where you say Apple had a gag order from the Justice Department until just recently, a month or so ago, which is why we're learning from a lot of media outlets about what exactly happened. And also, a couple of months ago was the first time that these members of Congress themselves learned that they had their records subpoenaed because the gag order finally expired on Apple.
So for the Justice Department to have received the gag order in this matter, they very likely had to have a federal judge sign off on that. And that's part of this that I think has received less attention, which is that the judicial branch had some role here. And, you know, the Justice Department was obviously the one going out and doing this, but that the judicial branch allowed the Justice Department to keep this secret. That's why we didn't know about it until the past few weeks, where these subpoenas and this action has trickled out. And in that case, certainly, for example, in the case of the attempts to get my and my colleagues' information from our email, it was only our general counsel who knew about it for the first several weeks, because the court would not allow him to tell anyone. And eventually he received the permission to tell a few people at the Times, but he could not even tell the editor of the New York Times, Dean Baquet. He only found out about this a week ago as this was all becoming public. So the Justice Department was allowed to operate in secrecy in this, which they say was necessary to protect these ongoing investigations, because people could try and destroy evidence if they knew that the feds were moving. But also, when things operate in secret, there's a lot less scrutiny. It's a lot easier to hide from the media and others who will question, why are you doing this and what is truly behind that? And it looks like that tactic, that approach was used in regards to Schiff and the others on the Hill.